At 11:40 on the night of December 29, 1944, Major Carroll C. Smith sat hunched inside the narrow cockpit of his P-61 Black Widow on the dark strip at Muro. The engines murmured low, steady, patient, while above him the sky was a wall of black. No moon. No stars. Just cloud and shadow stretching over the Philippine Sea. Behind him, Lieutenant Philip Porter leaned toward the soft green glow of his radar scope, watching a single bright mark slide slowly across the glass. One contact. Then another. Then more. 12 Japanese bombers were moving south, straight toward the sleeping airfields and the thousands of American engineers and soldiers who lay in canvas tents below. Smith was 26 years old. 43 combat missions already behind him. 4 enemy aircraft confirmed destroyed. But nothing in his training, nothing in Florida or New Guinea or the months of endless patrols, had prepared him for this night. For 2 weeks the bombers had come every night without fail. 334 air raid alarms in 14 days. Conventional bombers. Suicide planes. Anything that could carry explosives. The Japanese understood what these airfields meant. If the Americans finished them, fighters could protect the invasion fleet bound for Lingayen Gulf. If the airfields lived, the invasion lived. And so the bombers came, night after night, trying to burn construction crews, fuel dumps, ammunition stacks, and schedules into delay. The 418th Night Fighter Squadron had arrived only 3 days earlier. 1 squadron. A handful of aircraft. And tonight, for the moment, only 1 plane in the air. Smith's Black Widow. If the bombers broke through, men would die in their sleep. If fuel tanks burned, the invasion might slip by weeks. Smith stared into the darkness and felt the pressure close around his chest. The war, for this hour, rested on the wings of his airplane. The Black Widow was unlike anything the Japanese had ever faced. Wide wings, twin engines, heavy and solid, built not for speed or elegance but for one purpose alone, to hunt in darkness. The real weapon wasn't the cannons in its belly. It was the radar hidden in its nose, sending invisible pulses forward into the night, searching for metal and motion. The Japanese flew at night because they believed the dark made them invisible. They did not know that the dark now belonged to the Americans. At 11:42 Porter's voice came calm through the headset. 4 contacts. All heading south. All at different altitudes. Smith knew the arithmetic instantly. He could not stop 12 bombers. His fuel would last 3 hours at best. 10 minutes per intercept meant only 3 or 4 kills before he had to turn home. The rest would reach the airfields. There was no perfect solution, only damage control. He pushed the throttles forward and the engines roared, lifting the Black Widow into the sky. Porter began to guide him by numbers alone, headings, altitudes, ranges, while outside the canopy there was nothing but ink-black cloud. The radar pulses swept ahead, bounced, returned. A glowing blip appeared on Smith's own small scope. Somewhere out there, invisible, a bomber was flying straight toward the men below. The first target resolved slowly from shadow into shape. A Mitsubishi G4M Betty, heavy with bombs, its exhausts glowing faint orange. The crew had no warning, no alarm, no hint that death had slipped in behind them. Smith eased closer, the blip growing larger, the dark silhouette finally emerging from the clouds. At 350 yards, he centered the reticle and pressed the trigger. The night shattered. 4 cannons spat fire. 48 shells tore into the bomber's wing. In an instant fuel ignited and the aircraft rolled, burning, falling toward the sea. Smith watched until the flames vanished into black water. 1 down. But fuel was already slipping away, the needle dropping faster than he liked. and 3 more contacts still marched toward Muro. Minutes later he caught the second. Another Betty, lower this time, sliding beneath the clouds. Again the bomber flew calmly, unaware, until the Black Widow rose behind it and tore it apart with a short burst. Fire blossomed. Metal screamed. The ocean swallowed another enemy. 2 kills. 10 bombers still unaccounted for. And now only 40% fuel. The third contact was different. Faster. Turning. Climbing and diving in nervous zigzags. This one knew the night was no longer safe. A Nakajima Helen, heavier armed, its tail gunner searching the darkness. Smith slid beneath it, creeping into the blind belly, following every twist and roll while tracers suddenly flashed past his canopy. The gunner had seen him. Surprise was gone. Smith fired longer this time. The shells smashed through the fuselage, ripped into the engine. The bomber rolled inverted, burning, spinning down through the clouds until it vanished. 3 bombers in half an hour. The fuel gauge now hovered near the danger line. Any sensible pilot would turn home. But one more contact remained, low and close, only minutes from the airfields. Searchlights were already sweeping the sky below. If this bomber reached the target, the night would still end in blood. Smith dove. The 4th Betty flew straight and steady, aimed directly at the runway lights. Perhaps the crew believed fate had chosen them. Perhaps they no longer cared. Smith lined up once, carefully, knowing he had no fuel for a second chance. The burst was short and perfect. The wing tore away. The bomber fell burning into the sea. 4 bombers in 55 minutes. Smith turned south at once, heart pounding, fuel nearly gone. Behind him the remaining Japanese aircraft had turned away. The night raid had broken. The airfields were safe. But the night was not finished with him. On the way home Porter called out another contact, between Smith and the runway. A single fast fighter, heading toward Muro. Smith glanced at the gauge. Less than 20%. He could ignore it and live. Or he could turn, fight, and maybe die. He turned. The fighter never knew he was there. The Black Widow crept in behind the sleek Frank, and at 300 yards Smith fired his longest burst of the night. The engine exploded in flame. The pilot bailed out, parachute blossoming white against the black sky, as the burning fighter struck the water. 5 kills. Now only fuel mattered. The runway appeared at last as a faint line of yellow dots, then vanished. All the lights went out. Smith was 3 miles out, low, slow, nearly empty, with no horizon, no ground, no reference at all. He could not divert. He could not climb. He could only descend blind, guided by instruments and faith. He came down by numbers alone. 400 feet. 200. 100. The altimeter whispered the earth toward him. At 25 feet the wheels struck crushed coral hard enough to rattle his bones, but the gear held. The Black Widow rolled, slowed, and stopped in total darkness. The engines died with 6% fuel left. An hour and 3 minutes after takeoff, Smith climbed from the cockpit shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion. 5 enemies destroyed. The airfields intact. The invasion still on schedule. And the next afternoon he went back up and shot down 1 more. 7 kills in less than 24 hours. No parades followed. No memoirs. The airplane was scrapped. The night faded into paperwork and archives and dust. But on one black night over Muro, when 12 bombers came to burn an invasion out of history, 1 young pilot and 1 quiet radar operator stood between war and catastrophe, and the darkness itself became their ally.